Hello and welcome to Higher Thinking on Higher Ed. I am Sharlyn Carrington of Content Strong Communications, the fractional communications and marketing leader of choice for universities, colleges, and nonprofits. Today, I am excited to continue diving into the trends, the challenges encountered by communications and marketing leaders and leaders in general in higher ed. And I am honored to welcome Dr. Robert Hoffman to the hot seat today. Robert is the president and CEO of Yosan University, where he leads strategic growth while teaching in both master's and doctoral programs. You can correct me if I'm wrong after,
No,
Robert.
you're totally right.
Good, good. A seasoned researcher, clinician, and former music producer, he bridges Eastern medicine, integrative health, and creative innovation. He also serves on national accreditation boards and is pursuing research on Chinese herbs and cancer treatments. That is huge. Thank you again so much for bringing your expertise to this
Thank you.
conversation.
Thanks for
Good.
having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, I'm so happy to dive into this conversation with you. I think this is a little bit of a different lens. I'm always looking for the different lens and the different angle on kind of this conversation, what's happening in the current climate. And
Yeah.
my first question is typically like situate us a little bit. I mean, you're leading one of the few Chinese medicine institutions experiencing growth during a time of, contraction, quite frankly. Can you share your vision for Yosan and, how your leadership is, I guess, positioning the institution for the future?
Yeah, so I come at this. I'm fairly new in the industry. I graduated with my master's degree in 2015 and my doctoral degree in 2018. So I'm, 7 years now into the journey of being an administrator. So a lot of my experience, is coming from the music world, is like, how do I
Right.
be creative? Like, how do I change things? What can I do to innovate? And the industry, as you mentioned, is really going through an incredible transformation. Up until 2014, we saw like a very linear growth pattern
Right.
across all schools and even across the industry, the kind of the acceptance of acupuncture moving into institutional healthcare, things like that. But then from like 2014 up until COVID, things began to shift. And
Right.
I've looked at the data, and other schools and governing boards have looked at data, and we don't really have a good answer for it. But from in that time period, we probably saw really like a 20 to 30% decline in students enrolled in Chinese medicine programs. So there was a lot of contraction in that time period, and then COVID hits. And while that further shrinks enrollment numbers, you have government programs, you have
Yeah.
PPP loans, SBA loans, and that propped up a lot of these institutions for a moment. But then 2022 hits, and reality sets in, and
Yeah.
enrollment numbers don't come back. So it becomes a, everything becomes about strategic growth, strategic planning,
Right.
and are you able to, number one, kind of contain and retain the students that you've already got on campus? And how are you positioning yourself in the marketplace to try to attract new students, students who've never considered Chinese medicine as a career,
Right.
and students in a competitive market like Los Angeles? We had 6 schools up until recently. One of them just closed. So across our entire industry in the last 5 years, we've seen 6 major institutions close, some of the oldest schools in the country. Um, that's partially due to enrollment, but also like the entire dynamic of education has changed. I know I've
Yeah.
watched, the other podcasts, and everybody will tell you like the delivery of education has changed. The content, or how we speak about the content, has totally changed.
Right.
Both because of COVID, the political climate, everything has radically shifted. And if you're doing what you did pre-COVID today, you're probably struggling. You're
Yeah.
probably on a trajectory for failure. Um, so I came in the end of 22. The board of trustees, who are founders, are part of the board of trustees. We're a small school, small family school, really nonprofit. Um, and they decided we needed to make a transition. And I had been the dean of the doctoral program here. And through the course of those 3 years, they liked what I had to say. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, he's got his pulse, he's got his fingers on the pulse. He's out in the community, he's out nationally working with the accreditation commission, with state boards. Um, so we had a transition period, and I became the CEO in April of 23. Starting to lose track of the years. 23. So it's just been just over 2 years. And in that time, we've doubled our enrollment. We just about doubled our clinic revenue, our on-campus clinic. We're definitely in a pattern of growth, through this transition, and that's we were talking before we started the podcast. That's why I work 7 days a week and don't sleep too much. But that's kind of what it's taken to get us back, in this trajectory of growth.
I want to ask you so many questions about what you just said, and I'm going to ask you so many questions, but I want to ask you something slightly unrelated, and you
Yeah.
can feel free to not answer it. What made you move from the music industry
Oh, great
here?
question. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great question. So I started as a paid musician or composer while I was still in college. I was working in New York City for ad agencies,
Right.
doing really internships, free work with the idea that if I got in, maybe
Then you
I
can
could
do
write
that.
it, write, could write a jingle or something like that. And
Right.
that actually worked through my junior and senior year of college. And then I went in full time into the music industry after college. I got a job in New York City at a recording studio. And I had an amazing career. I worked with Michael Jackson and Quincy
Oh
Jones and
God.
Janet Jackson, and the list is, amazing. I went on to produce Christina Aguilera. I helped her get her record deal, her debut record, and continued to work
What?
with her through the years. Yeah, it was a really good run. Um, but kind of early 2000s, 2004, I began to get like an itch.
Right.
Music was getting it,
Not
it
it.
wasn't fulfilling something, in my life.
Yeah.
And really there was a huge transition. I went to Sri Lanka to do tsunami relief with a bunch of friends. And we were digging wells and hanging electricity and doing all this kind of stuff. Um, and that 3 week period, like I came home and I remember leaving the airport and my wife didn't even recognize me. Like it was that transformational.
Yeah.
And I knew like I need to do something in my life and my career to help people
Right.
all the time, full time. That's what I want to do. I want to help people. And on that trip, one of my friends, my martial arts teacher, was with us, and he is an acupuncturist.
Right.
And everywhere we went, he was able to do acupressure and make teas for people. And even though we had no Western medicine with us, he was able to help people
Right.
throughout that entire trip. And I said, that's what I want to do. I have a background in martial arts. This connects with me. So it took some time to, unwind my life in the music
Right.
industry. And I went back to school in 2010 and kind of haven't looked back. I still do a little bit of music here and there. I have a few clients and friends that I'll work with, but most of my life is now consumed with Chinese medicine, education, and research.
Robert, what an incredible story. What an incredible story. There's so many things I pulled out of that, but I'm going to get back to our actual topic a little bit at hand. And, you talked just now about transformation. Like if I were to pick one big theme out of what you've just
Yeah,
said, a transformation in your life, but transformation in, our current climate, and transformation in just this idea of, across the board, Chinese medicine schools and what that means for everyone. Clearly, I feel like Yosan must have had some kind of transformation over the past few years that has helped you guys grow, where other people are not growing.
yeah,
What do you consider that thing? Like if you had to put a name on it, a label on it, and say it was because we did this, it's because we're doing this that's able us to, double your revenue and all the other things you just said, double your enrollment.
yeah. Um, we listened.
Yeah.
We listened. We um, when I started to put together our team, and we had a huge shift of personnel.
Right.
Um, when I started to put together our team, the primary thing that I spoke to everybody about, and the kind of the driver in picking these team members was how well they listened.
Right.
We needed to become student driven, and that's not an easy thing because every student body is so diverse,
Right.
right? And they all want something different, so it can be schizophrenic sometimes. But my goal with our team, I ask them all the time, find a way to say yes. And if we can't, let's figure out how to soften, that blow when somebody asks
Right.
for something. Like, is don't just say no. Like, there are other administrations in the world that where every answer is no,
Right.
but I want to say yes. I want to say yes as often as possible. And I tease my students all the time. Like, have you ever heard me say no? I'm like the
Right.
worst father there is because I never say no. Um, so listening was it, but along that in building the team was making sure that I had a team that is inspired.
Right.
They're not marking time here. They're not marking their calendar. They're not in the educational world because they couldn't make it somewhere else. They
Right.
want to be here. They want to teach. They want to inspire people. They want to innovate. They realize that the medicine itself has only been legal in the US for 50 years. It's still a baby industry.
Right.
So, where can we innovate? It's way too young to get stuck. So, and then within that, making sure that I continue to provide a culture of innovation, right? That everybody has a growth mindset. Our founder once asked us, or in a meeting, basically said, like, I need you all rowing the boat in the same direction.
Yeah.
That's not to say we can't have opposing ideas, but like we have to know that our trajectory, we're all moving in that same direction. The boat's going the same direction. We're all rowing that same direction. And
Right.
then within my team, I'm always looking for continued training. We bring in outside facilitators to train us in various topics. Um, Everything, of course, all the standard kind of FERPA, HIPAA, OSHA, all
Right.
that kind of stuff. But what else can we do? Distance education, the student portals, like all these kinds of things. We're constantly bringing in training to the staff and faculty to just continue to innovate. I never want to get stuck. And
Right.
that's from my music world. That's
Right.
you
Of course.
can't if you're stuck, like
Yeah, and you fail.
you're
Yeah.
not going to be successful. And then something I've mentioned in other interviews before is I got to work with Quincy Jones when I was about 25, um, and it was hugely transformational for me then and still inspirational now. And Quincy once said, he said, make sure you're not the smartest person in the room.
In the room.
Surround yourself with people more talented than you. And that is absolutely my goal in every
Right.
facet is like, I don't need somebody that's going to say yes to me. I need somebody that's going to say, have we thought of this? Have we done that?
Right.
So it's all about team building. And as a music producer, that's all I did every day was build teams to create music. Who's the best guitar player? Who's the best drummer? Who will fit this style of music better than anyone else? So I'm just
Right.
applying that same model here.
I think that's such a very interesting and useful insight for just about everyone. I mean, of course, it comes from Quincy Jones.
Yeah, it
That's
helps that it
for
comes from Quincy. It
of
has a
course. Uh, I think about all the things you just said in terms of transformation and just this idea of listening exercise. And as a communicator, that's people are always like, you do a lot of this. I'm like, actually, communications is the exact opposite of that. Like,
yeah.
it's about responding to the listening. Like, I'm completely on board with what you're saying. So you talked a little bit about, what you're doing really well and, as a new CEO in a niche and transforming sector, I mean, that's really good to hear. And it's interesting to hear what those initiatives are that are proving most effective. What are you still encountering in terms of like friction and uncertainty? Where are your kind of big challenges right now?
Um, this will be an exercise in how not to stick my foot in my mouth. So, you know, I'm the new guy, right? I'm the new guy in our industry. I'm the new guy, at the school itself. Um, and even though the industry itself is only 50 years old, it's
Right,
primarily driven by school owners, people that started the school, actually as an entrepreneurial, concept who are now the presidents at lots of these schools. So only
right,
about maybe 35% of our industry is nonprofit, the rest is for profit. So as the new guy, as one of the younger presidents, there's definitely friction and pushback. It's like, well, why would you want to do that?
right.
There's definitely that kind of like, we're all doing this and we're surviving, and it's kind of like, for
Are you?
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, for now. So I definitely encounter that. So I try to do I do a lot of outreach. I'm in all these various councils and governing boards and all of
Right,
these things to just kind of present ideas. And the way that I try to do that, I don't come in with a hammer, even though I'm from New Jersey and I can have a very like large personality. um, I do try to go in and say like, look, this is the data.
Right.
Now, we can make a decision as a group, we can make a change as a group, but let's make sure we come at that from a data-driven process, not
Right.
I feel, I want, I think. It's like, let's look at data, and then we can really make some changes based on that data, as opposed to maybe what's best for our individual school or just based on our pure emotional drive to create
Right.
change. Like, let's have data. And I think that's um, for me, data is everything.
Well, I mean, I was going to get to this question maybe like two questions from now, but I'm going to ask it now because you bring it
Yeah.
up. I mean, are there particular metrics, indicators that you are specifically tracking, like
Oh
the
yeah.
impact of these changes that you're having, and how are they kind of informing your decisions?
Yeah. So I have I can't show it to you because it would take up like a matrix screens. I have three screens in front of me, believe it or not. But I have we have these performance dashboards
Right.
that we monitor everything from, in our clinic to patient numbers, new patient numbers, return patients, lost patients, what type of treatments they've gotten, obviously daily numbers, revenue, all those kinds of
Right.
things, where they heard about us. And then on the academic side, like just for enrollment, of course, we're looking at our website stats. We're looking at impressions, page content and traffic, click throughs, and ultimately how those numbers move into actual applications.
Right.
And then, of course, everything we do in our marketing world, social media, print, email, whatever it is designed to drive people back into that funnel.
Right.
So when I came on board, we were seeing something like, I want to say 600 or 500 impressions a month on our website,
Right. Right.
which is not good,
Right.
right? Now we're seeing something like 1.5 million impressions a month on our
Oh,
website.
that's huge. Okay.
Yeah,
That's a
so
big,
so it was
yeah, that's a big,
yeah, so it was a complete flip into that. We've got lots of content on there that's driving people who maybe aren't even interested in the education portion yet, but they're interested in acupuncture and
the
Chinese
insights.
medicine, so they're
Right.
they're coming to the website for that information. Um, then we look at, of course, conversion rates within education. We look at our applications to registration, and our goal is typically about 65%. We have rolling admission in January, May, and September. So we try to do, we target 65%. Um, Industry standards, anywhere from 20 to 50%,
You're
a
right.
little higher for graduate education, which is where we're at. But 65% is just about our target. Um, and we're hitting those targets again because of this admissions team that we've been able to put together. We have an incredible board of trustees that's actively engaged in our admissions and our enrollment and the educational
Right.
process throughout.
Okay, so it's interesting that you mentioned the admissions team. I want to hear about that. How are you, and maybe that's are all part of, your entire strategy. A lot of schools I speak to have this conversation about how all of their different teams are intertwined to do one thing. So whatever's happening in communications and marketing, they're seeing an issue here, and it feeds back into their overall institutional strategy, whether that's, academically and
Totally.
how they design their programs, and then how they tell the story at the end of that, and it goes full circle. I wonder if you have any, I don't know, insights to share about how you're kind of adopting your delivery models, your marketing, your enrollment, your advancement approaches, let's say, to remain kind of relevant and competitive in this new environment.
Yeah. So again, prior to my stepping in, there wasn't much of a social media campaign.
Yeah.
It was kind of, and when there were posts, they were maybe just informational about Chinese medicine or an event on campus. There wasn't like a targeted campaign. Now we've got someone that's leading the entire kind of marketing pyramid,
Right.
um, and is engaged in every aspect of it: admissions and enrollment, continuing education programs, on campus events, student driven events. Leading that whole piece. And then we have a member of our board of trustees who's a former marketing kind of guru.
Right.
So he meets with our team every Wednesday, right after this call, actually. Um, we get together every single week and we talk about all of these pathways of
Right.
engagement with the university and how they all relate with each other. And we're constantly doing, you know, simple things like we have a doctoral faculty member who's going to do a continuing education piece for alumni, who's also going to do a public program, who's also going to do a speaking engagement at a hospital. And all
Mhm.
of those things are tied together. And the brand awareness, again, from the website impressions, we can see like that brand awareness just
Right.
kind of, blossomed in a way that it just wasn't here before. But it required everybody sitting down on a regular basis, engaging people who had the talent, of course,
Right.
but making sure that really every single person has input into this process. Nobody's left behind. And that's also
Right.
something that I learned from Quincy. Quincy said, like, hey, you know what? The pizza delivery guy might have a good idea.
Right.
So, like, if he drops the food off in the control room, what do you think of the mix? um, is like, so, like, everybody has to be engaged in that process. You don't want them completely sidetracked from their
Right.
primary tasks because it's a university, it's got to run, and everybody's got their primary focus. But if you're marketing without input from admissions,
Exactly.
how are you hitting your target market? Do you even know what your target market is, right?
Is, yeah.
And even when I was recruiting the team, um, I wanted our team to be representative of the students that come to Chinese medicine
Yes.
school, right? There's something about walking into an environment. Everyone says when they walk into our school, like it feels they feel like they're home,
Right.
and that was very intentional on my part. Our industry is anywhere from 70 to 80% female practitioners, female driven.
Right.
Well, if you come to a school and the administration's all guys,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
They may be talented, right? But it doesn't represent the rest of the profession.
Right.
So I did that in terms of this entire recruitment process was like, what does our school look like? Who do we represent? And what's our potential student demographic and who do they represent? And is there some kind of, synthesis and synergy that needs to happen in this?
Do they see
Um,
themselves there?
they see themselves here,
Right.
right? It's so that, on top of just like campus updates I mean, it is, you said transformation earlier. It is, it's intense here. It's constantly ongoing to make sure that when you walk on this campus, um, as a new student, you feel home. You feel like you could spend the next 4 years here.
Well, I think your numbers are clearly showing that you're doing something right.
I know I joke if I worked for Pepsi, I'd have a jet, right? I'd have my own plane.
It's
If I
coming.
went,
Manifest it,
I
Robert.
know.
It's coming. Don't worry. Throw it out there.
Yeah.
Looking ahead to the next, I don't know, 6 to 12 months, what goals are you most focused on right now? Where are you putting kind of all your attention, whether it's, I don't know, financial health or curricular transformation or student experience, like you just mentioned, something
Yeah.
else? What
Yeah,
would you?
so we've been able to, you know, we were one of those schools that was moving into, the potential trajectory of closure,
Right.
coming out of COVID. So we've now spent these last 2 years transforming and growing and building something um, that's sustainable. And now we're reaching that point where we can say we can kind of breathe a little. We're not relaxing and resting on our laurels, but it's kind of like, okay, we're in a good place now.
Right.
Now, how do we expand this? We have a single campus building that all of our activities are housed in primarily. Um, and that has a finite number of students just based on the physicality of it, parking and things like that. So now, as an institution, we need to decide um, if we want to grow, what does that look like? Is it satellite campuses? Is it partnering with other schools in different states? Is it creating consortium agreements? Is it looking to China and Southeast Asia and Europe for partner institutions? Like, where do we want to be? Um, and I do use, larger schools, regional schools as kind of a model for that. Like, I'm really in love with Brown's EMBA program that has partnership with a
Right.
school in Spain, like things like that. Like, what can we look to, how can we look to those schools, those programs, and use them as a model, and what will work for us and what won't? We just
Okay.
created a partnership with a university in Hangzhou, China, Zhejiang Chinese Medicine University. We created a dual doctoral program. So students
Okay.
will attend the didactic classes here, and then they'll go to China to do research and do clinical rotations in the hospital there. So
Okay.
building on programs like that to give students, a broader experience, kind of semester abroad, but much more
Right.
focused and much more detailed. Um, that program's about a 4-year program on
Oof.
top of their 4-year master's degree. So those are the kind of things we're looking to build.
Oh, wow. I can imagine that would be pretty attractive for somebody coming in and actually getting to go and to be immersed in and what that means when they take away that experience, what that will mean for their
Yeah.
practice in general, right?
Yeah,
And
I
just
mean that's what
skills.
I did. That's what I did for myself is I looked to go to school in China back in 2010, but it was going to be
Right.
about 12 years and I was like I don't want to go to leave the country for 12 years and then
12
come back
years. Yeah.
and reinvent myself. So I did my education in America, but then my PhD is with this school, Zhejiang
Right.
Chinese Medicine University, and it was like it was so again transformational. My as soon as I got involved in the school here, I'm like, I need to give people that. I need to make sure that that is accessible to them because it was a hard road for me and very painful at times. And
Right.
um, but now that I understand what it looks like, I can help my students have that same experience and hopefully remove the roadblocks and the speed bumps so that it's an easier experience for them.
That's probably why once again, why you're seeing such a change in enrollment because I feel like you're coming from it from a different perspective. You're not just an administrator, you were a student, and therefore
Yeah,
you're responding to specifically to student needs and the kind of desires and
yeah.
things that they need to fulfill their roundabout experience, right? Their whole
Yeah, it's
experience.
it's not a mystery
Yeah.
to me because I've walked that path and I'm
Right.
trying to blaze that path for you.
Right.
I would never ask somebody to do something that I haven't done. So
Right.
I'm trying to break down all those barriers for them.
Right. I have one last question.
Yeah.
And my last question is always the magic wand question. If I hand you this pen and we're going to pretend it's a magic wand and you could wave it around right now and, remove that one big thing or accelerate progress at Yosan in some way, what would that one big thing, one big boulder or barrier be that you remove and what impact do you imagine it having?
I would love, can I give two answers?
Yeah, give two answers.
Yeah,
Give two
I
answers.
would say from an institutional standpoint, like to build our endowment to the point where we could offer more scholarships. I would
Right,
love this education to become more affordable and more accessible for as many people as possible. Um,
right.
that if I could turn that switch or flip that switch today,
Yeah,
and I could get a large, funder or donor to come in and say, what's the dollar amount
yeah.
to make this education free? I would I would do it immediately. That's the biggest piece for me is making sure that this remains affordable and accessible or becomes even more affordable and accessible. But from an industry standpoint, like what I would love to see is um, more engagement and agreement across all of the schools across the country so that we could move into things that would propel the profession, national practice acts, um, agreement about educational standards, all the things that I do battle for in these governing boards and committees and all of
Right.
this. But like, again, magic wand, if we could somehow somehow agree,
Yes,
all in one moment
absolutely.
and push this thing forward because we're still as an industry very siloed and everybody's of course in a contracting industry, right, everyone's hyper
Out for
protective,
themselves. Yeah, yeah.
right, yeah, 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 even they're just it's like, hey, how do I keep my thing going
Going.
and I don't care about the guy next door. But I come at it from like, you know, having lived in New York before I moved to LA, it's like you've been in a neighborhood that has a lot of great restaurants. If you were
Right.
in Little Italy, at a certain time period, it's like every restaurant's packed and they're coming out, lines out the door. And when one restaurant gets popular, the next one benefits because nobody can get in there. And it's like,
Right.
I see the same thing with schools. Like, we're not we're not competitive. I tell my team all the time, don't even pay attention,
Yeah.
right? Just be the best we can be. And so I would love for the industry to be more collaborative, in that sense. We're not out for ourselves, we're out for the health and growth of our industry. And we can only do that through collaboration.
I love that big insight. And I think, I've had other conversations with other individuals across this sector at different schools and at different types of schools, like, community colleges and, smaller liberal arts universities and so on. And they are all saying this idea of creating the partnership with the other institution down the road, because at the end of the day, there is a need to come together and create like a shift whereby you're one really uplifting the value of what you have to offer
Yeah,
across the board, like higher education
absolutely.
across the board, number one.
Yeah,
And it becomes kind of like a almost like a national campaign of like needing to rechange and reteach and reframe the perspective of what it means to pursue education in general. So anyway, I appreciate a lot that you've said that. Is there anything else that
thank
comes
you.
to mind that you're like, Charlene, I really wanted to talk about this one thing, and you never asked me about it, and therefore I never said it?
No, I feel pretty good. This
Good.
was a great conversation. Yeah, I
It
feel
was
really good about, yeah,
good. It was. I
yeah.
really, really appreciate it. I appreciate your time and your experience
Thank
and
you. Thank you.
perspective.
Do you have any other lingering questions?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
I think it was a really robust
good.
conversation. I mean, the biggest theme once again is transformation, and I think
Yeah,
I think everyone will see that and take a lot of that insights or those insights away and ideally
good.
internalize that and find a way to use it in kind of in their own work. So to our listeners and to our watchers, I hope this episode did spark those kind of ideas for you or did kind of affirm your own experiences or help you see, a challenge in a new light. If you are in higher ed, you're a leader, you can be in communications or advancement or enrollment or marketing, whatever it is, and you want to have a conversation about what's going on in your world in the current climate, I'd love to hear from you. The truth is, these conversations are not just talk, they're a start of a shared roadmap for the future of our field. So let's get to work. Thank you so much again, Robert.
Thank you. So great to talk with you and to be here this morning.
Thanks.